Hey all, welcome to Parker's Reefs. In today's episode we're going to continue on with the Idiot Proof Reef Tank, and it's a really exciting day because today we're adding fish. Alright, so this moment in the Idiot Proof Reef Tank's been coming for a long time. The tank's been chosen, equipment's been selected, the sand, the rock, the pumps, the heaters, the lights, the type of water. The tank's been running now, it's had bacteria put in it, it's had a little bit of phantom feeding put in there, we've had some bacteria in it that help keep things seeding. We've got our first little bit of cleanup crew in there and one trochus snail. We are finally ready to add in our fish. Now our parameters are tested up perfect. We've got absolutely no ammonia, no nitrite. Had a little bit of nitrate, but I've done a water change to bring that right down to almost undetectable. We are ready for some fish, and I'm really excited to say that I know we were talking about going some crazy designer breed clownfish, but in the end I've gone for your standard. It's going to be really hard to see on camera there, but your standard Ocellaris clownfish. There was an overwhelming feedback in the questions asked. Whilst a few people were really keen on the designer clownfish, the overall flavour was to stick with what nature does best and come up with just a nice basic pair of Ocellaris clownfish. And between you and I, the budget for these clownfish was a lot better than if we went for some like Black Storms or Mocha Stormtroopers or something like that. So I have a little bit of a soft spot for the basic Ocellaris clownfish. I must admit I don't mind a little bit of a Picasso or something with a little bit more of a misbar pattern or something in there, but the people have spoken and it's time to add some basic clownfish in there. Now, I will point out that these clownfish I were originally looking to get from the fine folk at Coastal Clownfish. Matt and Jay do an incredible job at breeding some of the nicest clowns you'll see in Australia. With this whole coronavirus thing going on, I really didn't want to add any extra travel, any extra contact. I didn't want to have to go to the airport to pick these clownfish up. My local fish shop wasn't doing an order with them anytime soon, so things started to get a little bit difficult. But that being said, they do get supplied these captive bred clownfish from a guy called Keith in Melbourne. He breeds these right here in this city. My local fish shop does contact-free delivery, and I'm not talking about postage, I'm talking about delivery. So these don't get put into Australia Post or chucked in the back of a van of a courier. The local fish shop owner himself drives them to you. Things like that just made the choice of these captive bred clownfish the absolute obvious option for me in the end. And I don't know if you can tell by the smile on my face, I know I've been cooped up in the house for a little while, but I am so excited to be adding some fish to this tank. So I figured I'll bring the camera into the fish room. I'll show you how I'm going to acclimate these guys into the tank, because the last thing I want is anything to go wrong with them. We're going to take our time acclimating them in, and then we'll get the setup in the tank and sit back and enjoy. All right, so here we are. Here's the Idiot Proof Reef Tank. All I've really done, and I'm not sure, I'll see if I can unlock the camera to show you. I've got a chair here in front of the tank. Here's the chair. I've got my acclimation box there sitting on top of it, and all that really does is, it's a tub. It has a lid. I put the fish with the water they came from in there. I've got a little hole in this lid where I put my drip feed in, and then I've got an overflow on this tank which I'll put a bucket under. Basically, I put the clownfish with the water they came in this tub here. I grab my acclimation device here, which is really just some some RO tubing. It's got a little tap on there so I can adjust how fast I want the drip rate to be. I'll let the water come out of the tank itself into the water that the clownfish came in. I'll let that go for a good half hour, and then if it overflows into the bucket, no big deal. The fish can't get out, the water's going to be well acclimated to them. I'd like to give them between half an hour and an hour just to make sure they've had plenty of time to get used to the differences in the water. They should be pretty similar. My local fish shop doesn't run any copper or anything in the tanks. By the time the fish get to the display tanks, they've already been tank transferred and treated for any parasites or anything like that. So the actual water that they're in at the fish shop ready for sale is just standard natural salt water. So our parameters are going to be fairly similar, but a good long acclimation won't hurt. These guys were driven down from Melbourne, so the temperature might be a little bit different. There could be some pH differences, anything like that. We'll just give it a nice long acclimation and then they'll be good to go. So I'm going to go about setting this up, and we'll get stuck into it. All right, the exciting time has come. My clowns have been in there for about 45 minutes now. The water has two and a half, maybe tripled the volume. I've tested the salinity. I've got exactly the same salinity of 1.026 in my display tank as I do in the reservoir here. So as far as I'm concerned, these guys are acclimated and ready to get in the tank. I've got my net here. All I've got to do is disconnect my drip feed, take the lid off, net these guys and get them in there as gently as possible. So let's get into it. All right, now when I net these guys out, I want to be careful of them jumping. And I also want to make sure I try not to catch any of their gills or fins or anything in the net. If I was more concerned about the fish, or if it was a fish-only tank, it's not that I'm not concerned about the fish, but I know these guys have had no copper in their water, which means I probably could just tip the whole container of fish and water into the tank. The only reason why I'm not doing that is I know most fish shops are not like the one I go to, and most of them will treat their water, and quite often with copper, and as soon as you get copper in your display tank, you're never going to keep corals alive. So for best practice, I'm going to use a net just to make sure we get none of that copper in the tank. These guys are putting up a little bit of a fight, but in they go. And with minimal fuss, we'll get them in there, and they're off. They're going to go separate ways, but I'm sure they'll find each other again soon enough. There they go. They're paired up real quickly. In fact, they're almost sitting on top of each other. It's pretty cute. You can see them here. They're going to be a little bit scared. What I might even do is just dim the lighting down a little bit just to make them feel a little less under the spotlight. Just to let them settle in. There's nothing else in the tank, so like they're not going to be chased or harassed by any other fish or anything like that. But I just want to make these guys as stress-free as possible. I could even probably turn the light off, to be honest. Just to make them stress a little bit less. There's enough light in the room. And then once they settle in a little bit, we'll turn the light back on. Hopefully they'll find that nem because they'll look super cute in there, and we can call it a day. All right, guys, there you have it. The Idiot Proof Reef tank finally has some fish in it, and they're two beautiful little Ocellaris clowns. I'd really love to put it out there for you guys to come up with some names for these clowns. Preferably something along the Dumb and Dumber theme, but hey, I'm open to the best names out there, so feel free to pop your suggestions in the comments down below. As always, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Till next time, keep reefing, catch you later.